In terms of testing your scripts, I've already taught you that you can use the Facebook tool PHP-SH. So we can run that, and then we can grab documentation for example, scanf, which you will learn shortly. That's an easy way to bring up documentation, and you can also run scripts. So you can do everything from 2 + 2, but you can also execute scripts. Now, one thing that's come to my attention is that this is mostly Unix-based, which means that Windows users are going to have trouble getting PHP-SH to work. So there are a few different options. Remember, as long as you have PHP available on the command line, you can always execute a file using the traditional PHP syntax. I'll give you an example. Within the command line, I'm just going to create a file in my desktop called index.php, and I'm going to edit this file, and I'm going to simply return echo hi there. Okay, so now I've created this file, and it will echo hi there. If I want to execute that from the command line, I don't have to have PHP-SH installed. I can simply run PHP and then pass the file name, and we will get the output right there. So that's always one way that you can execute your scripts. I'll show you two other ways. One of them will be Mac specific and the other will be Vim specific, and hopefully between the three of these, it will appeal to the largest number of people. All right, let's take a look at the Mac version first. There's an app on the Mac App Store called CodeRunner. Here it is. Usually it's around $10. I believe at the time of this recording it's currently on sale, 70% off, but likely when you're watching this it won't be any longer. Nonetheless, it's still very cheap and it allows you to execute code in a number of languages really fast. So it's very helpful in those situations when you simply want to see how a function works or you want to test a little script. I'll give you a quick demonstration of how to use it. I'll close this out and we will open up CodeRunner. And I'm going to open up that index.php file that I created earlier. First, I want you to note that generally I've taught you to open PHP and close PHP. And the rule of thumb for this is when the core of your file will be HTML based, absolutely do this. On the other hand, if you are specifically within a PHP file and there will never be anything other than PHP, in that case, it's considered a best practice to leave it off. It's not required. The only reason it's there is to designate when you're done with your PHP blog. But if you think about it, if this entire file is just for PHP, it doesn't matter because all of it will be PHP. I don't need to worry about it. Okay, with that out of the way, let's test a function. So we'll write our first function by writing function test. And within here, we're going to return something. We're going to return some value. We're going to return hello world because this is the hello world of functions. So now we've created this function. It can be reused in a number of places. It doesn't do very much, but that's okay. It's your first function. If we want to call it, we can write the name of the function, and then we execute it by using the open and closing parentheses, like so. So now I can save this in CodeRunner. If I want to test it, I want to make sure the language is set to PHP, which it will grab the file extension and do that for you. Now I can execute it by either clicking run right here, or I can press Command R. Now you'll see this pops up at the bottom, but nothing echoes out. And of course it doesn't, because if you think about it, we called this function, it returned a value. Well, what did we do with that returned value? Well, we didn't do anything at all. So why don't we either echo out the value or store it in a variable? For now, let's echo test. Now I'm going to press Command R to run it again, and now we do get hello world. So this is a really easy way to test code and immediately run it in more of a GUI way rather than doing the command line. So because this isn't specifically your functions episode, we will only expand it slightly. And we're going to provide a name, and I'm going to make the function name something more descriptive, such as say hello. So now what this function is saying is, it's called say hello, it is expecting a value, which we have assigned to the variable name, and now we're going to return hello name. So now whatever value we pass in, it's going to return hello plus that name, and I'll add a comma right here. So now we can try this out. We will create a variable called greeting, and that will be equal to say hello. But now watch what happens. If we try to run it as is, I'll hit Command R, you'll see we get this stack trace error because it's missing one argument. So what it's telling you is, hey, I expected this name variable to be populated, but you didn't pass anything at all. All right, well now we will pass John Doe. Run it one more time. Now, of course, we don't get anything. And don't let this confuse you. We have assigned it to a variable, but it's only going to be displayed down here if you echo it out, or print R, or var dump. So in this case, we will echo greeting. And now we're going to get hello John Doe. If we change this to my own name, now you can see how these functions can be dynamic of sorts. They can accept data, and depending upon what you provide them, it will return something entirely different. So that's CodeRunner. Very helpful. It's available in a wide variety of languages, everything from Python to Ruby to C. If that would help you, definitely check out CodeRunner. And the next one we're going to take a look at is how you can use simple mappings and shell scripts within Vim. If you happen to be a Vim user, which plenty of people are, it's a fantastic editor. So I will close that out, and I'm going to open up iTerm, browse to my desktop, list the files, and now I'm going to use Vim and edit that index.php file, and now we're within Vim. Now for this section, I'm going to assume that you are a Vim user and you know how to use it. If you've never used Vim before but would like to learn, let me know and I'll provide you some resources. It's what I tend to use in my day-to-day coding. Nonetheless, it's not for the faint of heart. It has a very high learning slope, but once you get over that slope, you can be extremely fast in your editing. So I'd highly recommend you take a look. All right, so now we have the same thing. Well, if I wanted to execute this script from Vim, I can hit : and now we've told Vim I want to actually execute a shell script. So I could hit ls for list the files, and now you can see we're listing those files. I hit enter again, and I'm back in Vim. So now we just need to replicate that PHP file technique that we learned. So I will hit : and for now let's just do PHP. And if I want to grab the current file name, rather than manually typing it in, I can use %, and that means the current file. So now I hit enter, and we get hello Jeffrey Way. I hit enter again, and I'm back in Vim. Very cool. Now, if I do this again, though, one more time, now you can see we're duplicating. One more time, and it becomes harder to read each time because we're seeing the output from previous commands. So why don't we change this time to clear, and then we will run PHP on the current file, like that. Run it, and now we've cleared the screen and then displayed it. But I don't want to have to do that for every single test. I'd rather just type a keystroke and it immediately runs. So let's create a mapping, and I'll set it to leader P. In this case, I'll just use (P) because that's what I use. And when I type (P), I want that to map to this other sequence. So that should map to : to execute a shell script. And we're going to clear the screen and PHP on the current file, and then we'll add a return to execute the command. All right, I'll save that, and now we're all set to go. Now, whenever I want to test the current file, I type (P), and now we can immediately see that running. So let's delete these, and we'll say hello John Doe, and then one more for my own name, and then one last one for our CEO. Now, one thing I want you to note is right here we're going to have a problem, and you can see it actually. The color of the text right here is different than the color over here, and that's because we have a single quote within the name. So in order for that to work, I either need to change the wrapping quotes to double quotes, or instead I can escape this by preceding it with a \, and now that will work. Okay, so now we have our 3 functions. For each one, I'm going to echo it. And now if we want to run this code directly in the terminal, I type (P), and now that's run. Hello John Doe, hello Jeffrey Way, hello Khalis Taid. Great, so now you have a lot of different resources for testing your code. You can do it directly within the browser. Nothing wrong with that. You can do it within the command line using the PHP command. You can use it in Vim by creating a mapping, so it's as easy as possible. And you can do it on the Mac by using that program called CodeRunner. Additionally, there's lots of websites online that you can use as well. For example, if you go to writecodeonline.com, there's, again, lots of different settings here, PHP, JavaScript, and now we can echo, hi there, we can run our code right here, and it's essentially the exact same thing. So now you have 4 or 5 different choices for testing your code. If that means running all of your tests in the browser, nothing wrong with that at all, at least right now. If you're a Vim user, I would recommend you use that mapping technique, but every method will get the job done.